Hi, Lyssa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Catherine. Thank you.
Great. We have just a little while together. What is it that you wanted to focus on today?
Well, the thing that's been coming up for me has to do with the balance between being an entrepreneur and also having a life. So it's really that idea of like finding balance between my work and my real life.
Okay, so finding the balance between work and your real life.
Yeah, like I
What?
mean, I don't mean like I love my work and it's my real life too, which is part of the problem is that I do love what I do and I work a lot. And but then there's the spending time with my husband that isn't work related time.
Mm,
And we're really working hard to do better at doing things that aren't just like cleaning the garage together. Um,
so
you know,
not just the tasks, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly. Which is
yeah.
fun also. Like we're pretty project oriented people, so we even enjoy like the little projects and but I mean like we spent most of the last weekend cleaning out a garage to get a little bit more stuff out of our garage. We're working on clearing out stuff we've been holding on to for a very long time.
Mm,
But that doesn't feel like balance in the sense of we're working on doing our chores or we're working.
mm. So so you've identified kind of doing your work for your business and then chores with your husband. What is this other piece that you want to balance with that?
You know, I really want to make sure that we're taking time, that we're taking time where we are enjoying each other's company and we're also doing something. We have fun with our chores, and yet I work from home, and a lot of the times our chores keep us at home.
Mm, hmm.
And maybe what I'm really working on is I want to get the heck out of this house
Okay.
and doing something besides going to Lowe's.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing a little bit about wanting to spend time, just relationship building time with your husband outside of chores and spending time outside of the house
Yeah.
because that's where work is based and chores are based and all that. So,
And all that
okay.
stuff needs to be done too. So, I mean, but I want to find a balance. Like, because it seems to me, my experience of my life is that he gets home on Friday evening. We have a Friday evening sort of relaxing, hanging out together. And then on Saturday, we start doing something like what our chores are and then he's got stuff he's got to do for work also on Sunday reports and things like that. So there's this sort of the whole weekend can go by very easily, and maybe we've taken a couple of walks at the park with the dog,
Mm-hmm.
or we've run some errands or gone to the dog park or something, but it isn't the same as I think this is it. I want to consciously choose to come up with things that we do that feed our relationship and also our, I don't know if novel is the right word exactly, but different than just the stuff that we have to do.
Mm, yeah. So the want to do
Yeah,
versus the
I
things
think
that
it's
you
the
have to
wants to do.
do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, since we just have a little while together, I'd like to have a good understanding of what you would like, what success would look for you at the end of our time together. So, if we're exploring this kind of uh, carving out the time to do the things that you want to do with your husband away from home, um, what would look like a successful coaching session for you today?
I think, as I think about it, what would really make this successful for me is if I start even thinking like what kinds of things would I like to do, but also Like, what do I need to do to make sure it happens, I guess, is really the thing that is most important. Because I can talk about this all day long, and if I don't get an idea of what are the steps that need to happen in order to actually follow through on this, it will be yet another great idea that got filed away under the great idea tab in my file cabinet, and I maybe don't look at for another 3 months or something.
Okay. Yeah. So am I hearing that more than a great idea, you want to have the action steps to
Yeah, I think,
implement?
and also to figure out what my accountability will be for it, so that I'm not just filing it away under the great idea tab.
Okay. And so the action steps and accountability.
Yeah, that would be successful for me.
Great. And what role would you like for me to play today to help you get there?
Holding the space for me to explore those ideas, Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I guess my first curiosity is when you talk about these things that you want to do, what does that look like for you? What does that?
Yeah, what does that look like for me? Good question. I think that maybe as you even asked that question, that may be part of the problem is it looks like so many different things. And so I think it is getting away from the house is clearly one of the things. Doing something where we can take the dog is another thing. Like I enjoy like getting out and taking the dog with us. He has fun. We have fun. It's doing things outside usually, not shopping, not that kind of stuff. Like I'm not a big shopper. But I do like to get out in nature, and I like to, whether it is like, it's starting to get cold now, so this probably isn't the right time for this, but like, going out and going fly fishing or going for hikes, or as the weather starts to get colder, maybe really contemplating where we're going to go snowshoeing. So we actually have we're thinking about that kind of stuff. And it doesn't even have to be like overnight stuff. It could be, we live in a place that's super close to lots of outdoor activities. It's just that we actually have to get outdoors to do them.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is there's lots and lots of activities that you can think about that would feed this need that you have, this desire that you have. But I'm hearing some barriers come up, I think. So tell me a little bit about what barriers you see to doing those activities.
Well, the barrier, okay, so one barrier is I don't want to spend a fortune. Like I don't want to be spending $1,000 to go away for 2 nights, 2 or 3 nights someplace. I want to be really just finding things that I want to be exploring, but I don't necessarily need it to be super expensive. And so the financial part of it is right now a barrier because we just had to do some housework. And so I have siding my entire house issue come up. So I don't have a lot of free cash right now just to go gallivanting as much as I would like to gallivant.
Okay. So would you like to spend time right now kind of brainstorming ideas that you could do outside in nature that don't cost a lot of money right now? Or is there something else that we could do that would better serve you right now?
I think I can come up with the ideas because there's so many different places we could go around here. And I think the bottom line is that the real issue is I want to find one day each weekend that we actually go and do something that is just for fun.
Okay.
Unless there's something that has to happen that we're choosing, whether it is we take the ferry into Seattle and we go to the art museum and to have dinner, or if it is that we go to the Olympic National Park, or we go to, I don't know, Port Townsend and go to the beach or whatever, right? Like but it's less about like, we can figure out what those things are. It's more around like what has been getting in our way of just doing it, and making that one day a week happen.
Okay. So,
and I can answer that.
so that was going to be my next question is what's getting in the way?
Yeah. So I think, I think there's a sense of responsibility, and there's this, like the sense of responsibility to my work. I think my husband has a great deal of personal responsibility around doing the like chores around the house. And so, I mean, responsibility is like this really great quality, and yet it isn't. I think we're kind of, to use the tilt language, we're tilting a bit too much towards being structured and responsible, and not so much towards being fun and kind of free-spirited and creative, and like, or I don't even know if it's creative, maybe, I don't know, but it's like we haven't made a really strong commitment to ourselves to do this. Like we talk about it, but then we don't act on it.
I see. And you say that you have this sense of responsibility that may be getting in the way of spending that time together, that there's this list of to-dos is what I'm hearing, whether it's work related or chore related, that you feel like must be done first.
Yeah. I think that's a story we're telling ourselves for sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the story you're telling yourself.
Well, okay, so I can tell you my story, but my story is I do this because it's a way of spending time with Michael, and it's really important to him that we do these chores, like because in his mind they're not going away. So if we don't do them, then his list is just building, right? So I think that's my story about his story.
Yeah.
My story about my story is I enjoy spending time with him, and I enjoy the projects also. And there's a sense of accomplishment when we can walk into our garage again, right? Or like we spent yesterday, like I vacuumed the whole entire garage so there's not a spider web. Well, there may be one left, but you know what I mean? Like we cleaned out, like the garage feels great to walk in right now. And we only have another 6 months of, weekends that are probably required in order to get, because we had both of our moms living with us. And then, so we have not just our stuff in our garage, but we also have two mothers' stuff in the garage. And his mom passed away. My mom's moved back to New Mexico, but there's some stuff that's just not going to be going anywhere. So I have to figure out what to do with it. And lots of it needs to be shredded because it's things like taxes from 1997. You know what I mean? So, and that stuff doesn't just happen by itself. Like you've got to actually go out there and shred it, or hire somebody to come and shred it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing, I think, is that, and let me check this with you, jumping into this, you're sharing that both of your mothers lived with you for a while, is enlightening, because it makes me curious when the last time was that you and Michael felt like you really spent some time together just doing fun, the two of you.
Well, and that's really a good point, because my mom moved in with us, with me in 2013. Michael had already moved up here for work. We were in New Mexico, and she moved in with me because she couldn't afford herself anymore, and she needed more care. And so she moved in with us, and we moved her up here, and she lived with us for 4 years. During that time, Michael's mom needed a place to stay. She moved in with us also. And then we went through end of life with her here at the house. And then at about the 4-year mark of my mom living with us, I couldn't do it anymore. So we moved her into an assisted living here on Bainbridge. And then since then, she decided she wanted to go back to New Mexico. So we moved her back to New Mexico. So she's been back there since February. Mm-hmm. So she's not been living with us, but there's still a responsibility on my part at any rate. But you bring up a really salient point, which is we've spent so much time being responsible. Yeah. And honestly, it started before my mom even moved in with us, because we had to move her out of her house because she got really sick, and we had to move her into a rental, and I had to manage all of that. And we moved her into a place that was just a few blocks away from where we had our house, so that it would be easier for us to just get there on a regular basis. So we probably started really taking care of my mom in 2011.
Wow. That's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're really in a shift point, that your circumstances have changed, and yet maybe you and Michael still have the same habits.
I think that is a really good insight. And I think that it is true. I think that, that we've gotten into the role, or the role really, of just being responsible and not being carefree. And we were like, when we first, he's always been responsible. He was in the military. I worked for the military. We were responsible, but we also had that flexibility and freedom of, if we felt like we went for like every weekend we were off doing something. Like we would go snowshoeing, or we would go do stuff. Right. And hiking. We used to do geocaching all the time, which I I love geocaching. And then I broke my leg geocaching. Oh. And so, yeah, it was.
I didn't know it was a hazardous sport.
Well, I don't think that the geocaching in and of itself is, but the hiking and getting stuck in a little bit of a rock slide is hazardous. And so, I think actually, like if I were to go back to it, probably 2005 is where things really started shifting because of my broken leg and I wasn't able to walk for about 6 months. So I, and then it just like, so it's kind of been just harder for us to do it. So I think it's really almost a habit. Like we need to create a new habit of how we're going to interact moving forward with fun. Not with each other, because like we're fine with each other, but like we have to both we're going to commit to the habit of fun on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's almost like you can think of it as a new responsibility, right?
Yeah, the responsibility to joy and fun. Exactly. And it's so funny because it sounds so ridiculous. Like, well, of course you would just be able to go out and have fun. But I don't know why. It's kind of like we even agreed to like take scuba diving lessons. And at this point, we haven't taken them yet.
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, I totally understand, and I totally get the whole idea of when you're spending so long with being responsible and caring and serving other people. When that shifts, it can be hard to shift your time spent as well, right?
Yeah, it's not quite like empty nest syndrome, but
but there needs to be a new term for that.
Yeah, there's some elements of similarity. The difference is we didn't have to do it for 18 years, and we're still really great friends. So it isn't like we got disconnected along the way, right? Like we stayed connected. And yet what we've gotten disconnected from as a couple is the fun of just going out and having an adventure together on a regular basis. And I think the reason it's coming up so strongly for me right now is that we finally really do have, my mom's been gone, had time, we're starting to do it, but then again, there's these agreements that we made that we're not taking action on, like the scuba diving. And I think it is, for me, committing, because we're starting to have the conversations, but really committing to this idea of what will bring us real, every weekend, what will bring us joy, and not throwing out, like, maybe what we really need to do, and this is maybe is the conversation I need to be having with Michael, is one day of each weekend is set aside for us. One day is set aside for chores, right? So, because those things have to be done, laundry's got to be done, houses got to be cleaned, things like that. And one day is set aside to get in the car and go somewhere and do something for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And we did do this weekend. We spent Saturday going into the Olympic National Forest, and we went, hiking a little bit in the, like at Hurricane Ridge, and then we went down to the Elwha River where the baby salmon are spawning, where the salmon have been spawning. And there was all these little salmon it was very cool, like along this river. So we did it this weekend, so that's great.
So what supported you being able to do that this weekend? How did that happen this weekend?
I was like, we are leaving this house. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Because we're going. And I was throwing out some different ideas, and he's like, that's too far. This is too far. Let's do this. And so it's like, fine, let's do that. So that's what we did. And so I think it was just determination.
Great. Okay, so determination's a success factor. What was the effect of having that time away?
We had such a good time, and you see things, you're seeing new things with your eyes aren't looking at the same things that you always look at. Right. Yeah. And so there was that novelty piece of, I'd never been to any of these places that we went. They're so huge. We could go back to them over and over again, and I would see something different every single time. Right. So there's that. And then coming home, we, stopped at this really cool place and had this like awesome meal and a couple of local brews, you know what I mean? And it was just like this nice rounded out fun day, which then led to Sunday when we were cleaning in the garage. We got so much done. You know what I mean? So it sounds like even taking that time away maybe even made you more effective than what you did Sunday. I think so, because there wasn't any sense of resentment about it. And there was a sense that like we'd had this great day, that it made it fun. So that's a good takeaway for me to be thinking about also, is that I need that fun day in order to feel fully committed to the chore day.
Yeah. That's a little sharpening the saw, I guess.
Totally sharpening the saw, I love Stephen Covey.
I do too.
That's an aside, but it really is that.
Yeah, it sounds like a powerful insight about how spending that time away not only gave you that connection time you were looking for, but it also made your time doing the chores even more effective.
Yeah, that's a really important, and it's sort of funny, like it's a powerful insight. It's one I've had before. So it's not a surprising brand new insight, but it's a reminder insight of the importance of that going off and doing this adventure, whatever the adventure is. And I just also want to say this, there have been times where we had a project that was like the adventure, like we built a chicken coop together. And that was an adventure. And it was so, we had so much fun. And, we got all these like license plates and we shingled the whole entire chicken coop with license plates. And it was hilarious.
Wow,
I mean? Like we had so much fun with this chicken coop. And so, and with the chickens also. So it's not that it has to be like going for a hike or something like that, but it's that we're consciously choosing something that we're going to have fun with.
Okay, great. So that's
important for me to remember too. So that it is that we're doing something that isn't our typical, because I don't know about anybody else, but I think it is. Here's the other thing that I struggle with sometimes. We're both tired at the end of the week. He gets up at 4:30 every morning and he often gets home at about 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. Yeah. And so that's a very long day. Yeah. And he's commuting probably an hour to an hour and a half each way, because we've got ferries here and he's got to get across to Seattle and all that jazz and drive to where his office is, or he's driving somewhere. He travels a lot. And so I think for him, like being at home feels different than it does for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to be consciously aware of the fact that I'm here all the time. So he's not. And right. so there is a bit of a pressure to just relax at home. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I find relaxing at home boring.
Because you're home all the time, right? It's like,
so like we're like
the opposite. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that is a really important conversation for he and I to have also, so that even if it isn't every single weekend, like he needs some weekends where it's a down weekend and he gets to relax at home and he doesn't have to get out of his sweatpants and he can, read magazines on his iPad or whatever. He's not a super sports guy, but he does like watching the Seahawks. But that's usually a Sunday thing while we're doing laundry. But like having a conversation about what I want as far as us going out and doing stuff, but also a conversation around the fact that I also understand for him, there's this need to be home sometimes and not have to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you may sharpen your saw different ways. So how can you navigate both of those needs and together?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So you wanted to get to some action items, and I've heard you talk about the conversation you want to have.
Yeah, those are really the action items. I think it's really the two conversations the one conversation with the two parts that I want to have with Michael about, and we started this conversation because we were having it a bit on Saturday about how nice it was to just be outside and, and exploring some areas we hadn't been before. He hadn't been to Hurricane Ridge since he was like 7. So, and so that was a while ago. Without giving ages away or anything like that. Let's just say it was a long while ago. So we were starting that conversation, but I think the other element of how we both sharpen our saws may be different, and really having some clarity around how do we honor that for both of ourselves. I think that's important. And I think the accountability piece, because I know I had mentioned something around accountability.
Yeah. That was my next question.
Comes out of that conversation, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that he and I are like holding each other accountable, and it isn't just me going, let's go, but it's him going, all right, this is the weekend these are the 2 weekends we agreed. This is one of our go away weekends. And that way I don't feel like it's just me pushing, get me the hell out of here, right? But that,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, because I don't want to be in that role of, I don't want that to become my role in the relationship, is the pusher driver.
Right. And what I'm hearing is that I'm actually hearing 3 things. There's you as an individual, your husband as an individual, and you as a couple. for sharpening your saw. So there are three pieces to.
Yeah, and that's a good insight. I'm going to write that down real quick. Yeah. I'm tempted to write it in a text message so that I can just text it to him.
Yeah.
3 areas for sharpening. Me, you, us. Yeah. And here's the deal too. Like, I don't see him enough that I want, like, I mean, that I really want to do something separate from him on the weekend. Like, I find myself turning down things that's on weekends because I don't get to see him enough as it is, that I don't want to have like, oh, I'm going out with girlfriends to go do XYZ. I try and do that stuff during the week so that on the weekend I can just really be present to hang out with him, even if we're just hanging out at home watching a movie or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's that time together. That's great. But it sounds like you have a plan for moving forward, both with the action and accountability, and it's all hinging on the conversation that you're planning on having.
Yeah, it really does. It really, the conversation, it all hinges on that. So the conversation is the thing. And I'm quite capable of being accountable to have the conversation, since I'm not afraid to have the conversation. It's not a scary conversation.
No.
How can we have fun together? It's not like we got to talk.
Yeah, that's a happy one to have. So
yeah, that's a much happier one to have.
So Lyssa, what are your takeaways from our conversation today?
Well, I think my biggest takeaway is just like that awareness around the ways that we sharpen our saws may be different, and to make sure that element is addressed in the conversation, so that it isn't something we're just sort of stepping over because we're not thinking about it, or stepping over because I want to go out and do something because I've been at home all week long. I think the other thing that is the takeaway is just, I mean, really just how much this is important to me. And I believe it's also important to Michael. So I don't feel like I'm alone in this. And this shifting in roles, like this making the next step in the shift towards not being caretakers for our moms. Mm-hmm. You know, that we're really we have this opportunity. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't bring this up in the conversation, but this is something that's a takeaway because it's popping into my mind right now. Life is fragile and unpredictable. Yeah. I do not want to waste the time that we have not being in relationship to our lives the way that is meaningful to us.
Ah, yeah.
Right.
That's a beautiful takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really important takeaway for me to remember. It's because you never know, right? You never know anything. So yeah. I would hate to look back on this time with regret.
Yeah. That really sounds like the overall purpose of having the conversation.
Mm-hmm. It's because of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And having a life with someone where it isn't just we're just sort of doing a job together, and the job is called a house, or the job is called, mm-hmm. maintenance for the house. I'm like rethinking the whole house thing.
Yeah, there's so much more than chores, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I really honor you for having the presence of mind to identify that and to really commit to making a shift so that you can do that. And I appreciate the time, your openness and willingness to chat with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katherine. Thank you for supporting me through the conversation.